tournament. So this is a grueling tournament, right? I suppose if all these players at that time, back in 1953, you've got to remember we didn't have all the aeroplanes and everything else to travel around the world as efficiently as what we do today. So some of these players from around the world, to go to Zurich, this big tournament, they might have travelled by ship or by camel or horse, or maybe even they had a little scooter and they pushed it along with the wheels. I don't know how they got there, but it's amazing to think back in 1953 they got all these people there. Smyslov, David Bronstein, Paul Keres, Reshevsky, Petrosian, the Tiger Petrosian, Ephraim Geller, Miguel Najdorf, Kotov, the Russian Kotov, Mark Taimanov, who made the candidates and played Bobby Fischer, Avobach, Yuri Averbach, Boleslavsky, Szabo was a great player, Svetozar Gligorich, I did a YouTube video on him, Max Erver, and Stahlberg, okay? So we've got some mighty players here. So I've got quite a few games to play through with you. So obviously I'm not spoiling the book for you in case you want to buy it. I'm not spoiling the book for you because I'm going to only play through 4 or 5 games, right? 5 games I think it is, or is it 6? I'm not sure. If I can get to 6, I've got to stop talking. Anyway, the first game I'm going to play is by the author. So the first game we're playing through is Mark Taimanov against David Bronstein, who kindly wrote this wonderful book for us. And by the way, when you get this book, if you get it, he said I haven't gone into lots and lots of detailed analysis because he didn't want to spoil the game for people as they play through these 200 games. And he also said, there's not much point in going into analysis just too deep, too far-reaching and too deep, taking away from the beauty of the game. So he's tried to keep his analysis and his chat to a limited degree, right? But he talks about the position, and he doesn't just give you a little bit of analysis with the 200 games, but he talks about everything in a beautiful way. It's the Bononi defence, game 1. Mark Taimanov is playing the white pieces and David Bronstein the black pieces. And David Bronstein says it's a difficult thing to maintain objectivity when cementing, like put the mafia, give him the concrete shoes, bury him in it. No, am I joking? Hold on. No, when commenting, not cementing, when commenting on one's own games. He says variations in the commentator's favour are always interesting, so details flow quick and plentiful from the pen. Variations which favour one's opponent, however, are often unclear. Well, some chess players are like that. I'm usually very honest. If I play a bad move, I admit it. But there are chess writers and chess players that when they're doing an article, they will favour themselves slightly, Anyway, here we go. He says he feels compelled to note that black did not have a decisive advantage. So he's talking about his game. He was playing the black pieces. So the author of the book says, I didn't have a decisive advantage, though I did win the game. He says, psychologically, White's loss can be traced to the fact that he missed the turning point of the game at which it was necessary for him to begin giving serious thought to the problems of how to get a draw. In other words, when you're looking at a position, you also got to think about how can I get to a draw as well as how you can get to a win. Okay? Here we go. We're going to get into this. D2, D4, knight G, D2 to D4. Oh, wrong move. Got it wrong already. Knight to F6. It's because it's old notation. C2 to C4. C7 to C5, he says. So he's actually made the notation very easy for anybody all over the world to understand it. He puts in the move where you're starting from to the square where you're moving to on all the notes, right? So he plays C7, C5, D4 to D5, right? Then he says G7, G6. We just say G6 nowadays. Knight B1 to C3 and D7, D6. E2, E4. And we have the Bononi defence, B7, B5. Here it comes. I'll tell you what, isn't that brave? I mean, really, I feel that I would never play a move like that myself. Never play a move like that. And yet, David Bronstein, as good as he is, he played that move, B7, B5. This is almost a little bit like playing the Benko or the Benko gambit, but in a position that's not as good. So B7, B5. And he says, what does black achieve by sacrificing a pawn? He says, first he undermines the spearhead of white's pawn chain, the pawn on D5. In addition, after the unavoidable A7, A6 and B5, A6, he obtains the good diagonal A6, F1 for his bishop, which would have far fewer prospects along the C8, H3 diagonal. So he didn't like his position, so he thought, I'm going for it, right? That's basically what he means. But I'm not going to read all the notes and spoil it for you in case you buy the book. So C4, B5, bishop F8, G7, knight G1, F3, castles. Now this can be the same opening by transposition as the Benko. Bishop F1 to E2, just develop. A7, A6. Right. It says, up to this point, black might still have hoped to regain his pawn, but now it becomes a real sacrifice. Now it becomes a real sacrifice, he says. B5 takes A6. Another move in this position is A4, right? If you don't want to develop black's position, you can just play A4. So that's another move I've seen played, A4 with the idea of taking and then maybe even playing A5 or something. I've seen that. But B5 takes A6 was played and the bishop recaptured and white castle. You know who used to play this in blitz chess all the time when he first came to Australia? A young bloke called Walter Brown, Grandmaster Sean Brown. He played the Volga Gambit, as it was then known, or Blumenfeld Gambit, or Benko Gambit. He played this against me in blitz chess for $1 a game. Grandmaster Walter Sean Brown. He was actually Australian, then he went over. He was over in the States, and he come back to Australia, won the Australian Championship, and then he went on to win the Grandmaster title and a couple of US Opens. Great player, Castles. Queen D8 to C7 was played. So he just develops his queen, puts it on a safe square. This is not half as violent as what Sean Brown would play, but then again, this is back in 1953. If I was playing blitz, I often used to play queen to A5 in this position, queen to A5, because I know a little bit about this opening. Queen C7. And I know how to lose with it too. Rook on the F file to E1 was played. This is a perfect move. So if we had the chess engine here, we're not going to bother with the chess engine, but if we had the chess engine here, the chess engine would agree that this is a great move. For now, if bishop takes bishop, there is a variation, rook takes bishop, and the rook sometimes goes to C2 to hold the queen side together. And And for those people that might have just came in, we're looking at the game Taimanov versus Bronstein. Knight to b8 to d7 was played. And now bishop to e2 to a6. And rook takes a6. And now both players have basically completed their development. And white's got a pawn, and black's got some pressure on the queen side with the bishop down here. And he's going to bring his rook over here and put more pressure on down there. Okay. So queen to e2 is played. That gives white a tempo attacking the rook. It says Taimanov has decided on g4, on e4, e5, cracking the foundation of the black position. But this proves tactically unreliable. So there you go. So Taimanov has already decided he's going to play pawn here and try to crack it open, right? But Bronstein says that it's tactically unreliable. He said white would have more prospects with bishop to f4 and queen to d2. So what Bronstein's saying is you'd have more prospects with bishop f4 and queen to d2, right? Rook to f8 to a8. So he doubles the rooks. H2 to h3. Right. Knight on d7 to b6. Now you can see the two knights are on this pawn. So if you push this pawn here, this one will fall. Bishop to c1 to g5. And now knight on the f6 file to e8. So he doesn't want this knight to be captured. He's a bit concerned about bishop takes knight and pawn here. So he played knight here to e8. Bishop g5 to d2. I don't like this move. Now, a better move would have been, where's that thing? A better move would have been a3 or something, probably. Knight on the b6. Went back here. And knight b6 to a4. Now look at the pressure coming down on the b pawn, right? So the knight captures the knight. What do you mean the knight captures the knight? It does. Rook on a6 takes a4. I'm just acclimatising to the notation. He played bishop here. He wants to get rid of his bishop. And black is happy to just take it. He says, Bronstein says, I did not want to capture the a pawn, since white would then achieve his goal. b2 to c3. Now, here, queen here, that attacks two pieces at the same time. Threatens queen takes pawn and threatens rook takes pawn. As you can see, black's pawn structure is quite solid, right? Solid pawn structure. So if he can get a middle game or middle end game, black can be very, very confident that these two pawns may be under a lot of pressure or fall. Queen e2 to d3, so he tries to hold the c pawn. And now queen to a5 to a6. He says, oh no, I'll tell you, I'll even swap queens. You can swap queens if you like. Says black's endgame advantage is founded on the fact that his base pawn at e7 is close to home. In other words, he can always protect his base pawn. Very, very good stuff. So even at this stage, great Bronstein, he's telling you that he's looking at the endgame possibilities. So you might think, oh yeah, but this is a middle game. We've got queens and rooks, and no, it's a middle end game. This is a middle end game. So in Grandmaster Chess, and I'll be repeating myself here, but I often do, in Grandmaster Chess, Robert Fox, people will say if to beat a Grandmaster, you've got to beat him in the opening. Then you've got to beat him in the middle game. Then you've got to beat him in the middle end game. And then you've got to beat him in the end game. So you've got 4 stages of the game. So sometimes you've got to beat them 4 times. That's why you can't beat Grandmasters. They're so hard to beat. You've got to beat them 4 times in one game. Because there's different phases of the game, right? And we all learn that as we develop as chess players, right? I want to say hello to Robert Fox, to Mrs. Woobsy Unite. Robert Fox is a subscriber, Chess2025. He says, I don't get upset when I lose. How do you do that? Tell us a little about the psychology of chess. Well, I might get into that a little bit later, but I'm just trying to play through these games, this great tournament for the moment, because I am scheduled on chess.com to do that. And I want to say hello to first-time chatter, Shavi12. G'day, Shavi. Okay. And someone says, poor Taimanov does not get enough love. Fighter 3 we cannot play right now. Right, so queen to d2 was played. And now rook on the a4 to a2. He captures the pawn. Rook takes. Queen captures. e4, e5. He finally got the move in, but his pawn structure's weak. It says either white overestimated his endgame chances or else he simply failed to give proper consideration to black's strong 24th move. Queen takes a2. Oh, sorry, queen captures. Knight on f3 to d2, and here comes the strong move, d6, e5. Rook on e1 to e5, and one would think that, oh, it looks like white's drawing, but this move seals white's fate. King to f8. Now, it's probably still a draw with best play. Right? Knight to d2 to b3. And you've got to remember, playing the white pieces is Mark Taimanov against David Bronstein. Mark Taimanov, he made the candidates, so he's no slouch. I'm sure he knows his endings. And it says Taimanov is a born optimist. Having weathered his troubles reasonably enough, he immediately begins to ask himself why he can't simply win the black pawn. King to f1 would have been a more suitable move for the endgame. So now, in other words, this move was a better move. c4, c5. Now the whole idea about that move is that now this knight can beautifully protect the pawn. Knight b3, c5. Rook checks. Look at that big check. King's got to go here. Now knight on e8 to f6. Look at this move. Knight here. Okay, so now he's on this pawn. And stops the knight check threat too. Knight on c5 to e4. He says, oh, change knights. He says, oh, no, I'm not changing knights. I'm going to trap your rook. And now the rook went over here. It's got nowhere to go. And rook on a1 to a2. You can see what's happening. Black's pieces are just better placed. His pawn structure and his pieces are better placed than white's. Rook at g5 to g4. He says, oh, doesn't that lose the pawn here? Almost, but it doesn't. f7, f5, and now he saves the piece, right? Knight on d7 to b6, but now he threatens this pawn. See, that's a problem. Knight on e4 to g5, this knight's got to move somewhere. So it goes over here, so he can, if he takes this pawn, white can take that one, you see, that's the idea. And he takes it. Rook on f5. Look at the F file to D. Oh yeah, if he takes this pawn, black's gonna get this one. Oh, that'd be murder. So he played rook F4 to D4. He attacked the knight instead. So knight D5 to B6. So he's moved back and he's tried to hold this pawn, right? So because black's still got 5 pawns, white's got 4, but you can see that white's got real problems. He gave him a check, and he went there. Oh, here, and now he goes F4. He's hoping to get some sort of mating net there, but black's too smart for him. Bronstein's too smart. Knight G5 to E6. King to F7. Now the knight's got to move. Back to D4. Knight B6 to A4. Here he comes. He wants to take this pawn. Rook on the D file to C8. He says, "Oh, I'll get this pawn." He takes the pawn. Rook takes pawn. And you think, oh, this is looking more and more like a draw. So Bronstein says, if you take the knights from the board, or if it was Hikaru, Hikaru would say, if you take the knights off the board, it might be a draw. But the ponies, now he calls them the ponies. Hikaru calls them the ponies. If you take the ponies from the board, the game might wind up a draw, but black's knight has time to fork, right? So he says, fork you. That's right. So rook to C8 to C4, and knight C3 to D5. Okay. Knight D4 to F3. And now this is the move that is a pain in the butt. Rook takes pawn check. And he moved in the corner, and he just went there, and that was the end of the game, and white resigned. So that's how the author of the book, David Bronstein, defeated the mighty Mark Taimanov. And this game was played in round 1. It was game 5 of round 1. Now, my next game that I'm going to look at for you, the next game we're looking at, is we're going to look at Paul Keres versus Avobach. Now, I don't know whether people know who Paul Keres was. Does everyone know who Paul Keres was? Paul Keres was one of the great grandmasters. And his opponent was no slouch either. Paul Keres versus Avobach. Where is it? Where is that game? Oh, here it is. Yeah, Keres Avobach. And we're looking at Nimzo Indian. So we're looking at all sorts of openings tonight. We're going to now look at the Nimzo Indian. Looking at Nimzo Indian. And we're going to Keres Avobach. Now, the game Keres Avobach is from round 2 of the tournament, right? And Keres Avobach, round 2, it's game 11, right? It's Nimzo Indian. So D4, I've got Paul Keres playing the white pieces. Knight to F6, C4, E6 is played. Knight C3, Bishop B4. It's interesting. He's got the new notation on here. On the other game, he had the old notation. E3, castles. Bishop D3. Oh, that's because it's a revised edition. D5. Knight to F3. C5. Okay. Very important, as I've said before, if you're understanding this opening, that there are 2 pieces that black has to develop to gain some semblance of equality, or white might slowly positionally crush him. And that's the C pawn. So you want to really get rid of that C pawn if you can. and you want to put your knight on c6, but you don't want to put your knight on c6 before this pawn is eliminated, right? Hence, c5 is chosen, right, by Averbach. White castle, logical chess, move by move, develop all your pieces and castle. Knight c6 was played. He says, well, I don't mind if you take my pawn, I can recapture. White played a3. Now the question's been put to black. Do I allow white to have the two bishops after playing bishop takes knight? Or do I retreat my bishop here to a5, right? Okay. But he takes the knight and the pawn recaptures. And now b6 is played. And you can see that what this game's all about is the tension in the centre. Both sides want to retain this tension. And what black's trying to do is to try to keep this bishop locked in. See how that bishop's locked in by its own pawn structure? So it's a bit of cat and mouse going on here. b6, knight to e5 was played. Just remember that chess rule, beginners out there, and the chess rule is very simple. The chess rule is very simple, and no, I can't analyse your game, chess master. The chess rule is very simple. In open positions, the two bishops can become strong. So white's looking to try to get open lines, and with the bishop and knight, without not having the two bishops, black's trying to keep things semi-closed until he can get his major pieces working, right? Bishop b7 is played. You see, quietly just develops his bishop. And white plays f4. Now you can see white's got some ideas of possible kingside attack, but it's a long way down the track. White would love to play bishop here, and get the bishop over here. You'd love to get that bishop on a good square. Knight to a5 is played, but you've got to remember we're playing Yuri Averbach, and Yuri Averbach's not just going to sit there while you execute your chess plan, right? White plays, black plays c. White plays c takes d. Queen takes back, queen takes d5. And just looking at the position, one would think that black's got a beautiful game, because he's threatening checkmate. Is there a threat there of checkmate? Yes, it's protected by the bishop. And queen takes pawn check. If you could play, that would be checkmate. So white defends against the checkmate with queen to e2. Black plays pawn takes pawn. The e-pawn recovers. And now black puts his knight in here because he wants to get the two bishops off the board. Right, knight to b3, rook to b1, and now he's got rid of the bishop. He's so happy. He said, I got rid of one of those bishops. Now the position should be equal. Well, should be, but not necessarily so. It's not clear. Knight takes c1, rook, and b file takes c1. He takes with this rook, mainly because this rook's doing a good job defending his king, right? So he takes with that one. Now rook on the a file to c8's played. This is a semi-open file, so black wants to occupy a semi-open file. Queen to d2 was played. And now queen to d6. He just slips back and he threatens a pawn. Right, so the pawn is a threat. Pawn alert! Pawn alert! There we go. Now I'm sure Paul Keres and Averbach weren't yelling out to each other, pawn alert, right? Queen to d6. f5 was played. He says, you can have the pawn. He says, I don't want the pawn. He says, I want something else. And e takes f was played. And now bishop takes f5. He's on the castle. Right. Rook c7 is played. Just a very good, solid move. It interconnects and protects all the pawns along there. White played c4, and now the pawns are a little bit more mobile. Rook to d8 was played. Right, just putting pressure on here, threatening queen takes pawn check. White played rook f4 to protect the pawn. This is complicated because you can actually play queen takes knight, okay? Queen takes knight, and if pawn takes, rook takes queen, and pawn takes knight, right? That'd be a very messy game, wouldn't it, after queen takes knight? And funnily enough, g5 was played, and it's a surprising and correct decision. It's actually the correct decision in the move, in the position. You would think, oh gee, that's a terrible weakening move, isn't it? Rook to f2 is played. Gee, I don't like this position for black. And now queen takes d4. Oh yeah, because you had to vacate the d pawn. Oh, now we see queen takes d4. Look at this, will you? Now he could take this pawn off. What would be wrong with that? It's check. It's a check. I don't believe it. g5. Rook to f2. Queen takes d4. He took a queen off. Why can't he take a pawn to check? King to f1. No, that can't be right. Sorry, bishop f5, rook c7, c4, rook d8, bishop, rook takes f4, g5, rook to f2, queen takes d4. He took, take it back. He didn't take a pawn. I don't understand it. I don't understand. Anyway, he took a queen. Rook takes d4. Rook on the C file to f1. That looks like a decent move. Rook to d6. h4. Aha! It looks like a draw, doesn't it? Looks like a draw. You can see where black's got some good play. He's got lovely bishop, lovely knight there. G takes h, he takes the pawn off. White played rook f4, and now he's activated these two rooks. Rook c5 is played, attacking the knight. And now the white knight moves to here, knight to g4. Knight takes knight. Rook takes knight. King to f8. And bishop to h7. Yeah, you would think that white's got some drawing chances here. Bishop to a6. Oh, he's on the pawn. He could move here and threaten checkmate. That would threaten checkmate. But let's see what he does. But rook on the f file, therefore he protects the pawn. Rook to h6. Attacks the bishop. Now there's no checkmate. Bishop goes back. Oh, he's just trying to fortify his position. h3 is played. G takes h, rook takes h3. Can you see what's happening in this position? Slowly upon slowly, the white king's being opened up and hasn't got much shelter. Rook to d4 was played. Bishop c8. Now he's on the castle. This is getting dangerous. rook to d8 check, king to e7, rook on the g file to d4, bishop to e6. You see black's got a good game here, but can black finish white off? King to g2, just threatening the rook. Rook g5, check. Oh, gee, these rooks are dangerous. King to f2. At this time, 37 moves have been played, and they might be reaching a 40-move time control, so they could be short of time. Rook to a5, he slides over here, protects his own pawn, and attacks this one. Rook to b8, he wants to get a check, but it doesn't have much effect. Rook takes a3. Now bishop e2, and after rook to h2 check, king e1, rook to a1 check, rook to d1, rook takes e2 check wins. For after king takes, bishop check, and rook takes rook, right? And that's the end of the game, okay? Got a little check here, but the rook can go back. Okay, so that's how Avobach beat Paul Keres. Just for people that don't know, a lot of people might not know Averbach. Hold on a second. Just in case people don't know, who was Averbach? I think his first name was Yuri. So, yeah, so we can go to Yuri Averbach. Who was Yuri Averbach? Well, he was a chess grandmaster. His name was Yuri Lovovich Avobach. He was a Russian chess grandmaster and also an author, chess author. He was chairman of the USSR Chess Federation from 73 to 78, and he's the first centenarian FIDE grandmaster. And despite his eyesight and hearing having worsened, he continues to devote time to chess-related activity. He was born on the 8th of February 1922, and he's 100 years old. Yuri Averbach. There you go. And he had his 100th birthday. Yuri Averbach, he had his 100th birthday. There you go. His FIDE rating, 2445, the latest, but his peak rating was 2550 in 71. Talking about his tournament successes, he was the oldest living grandmaster. He got first place in the Moscow Championship of 1949, ahead of Lilienthal, Estrin, and Vladimir Simagin. Okay? He won the USSR Championship ahead of players including Taimanov, Korchnoi, Tigran Panoshin, Efrem Geller, and Salo Flora. No wonder he qualified for this tournament. So that is a little bit about Yuri Averbach. And his opponent, well, I think we all know Paul Keres. I think we all know Paul Keres. But for those people that might not know Paul Keres, so we're going through the players, and who are they? Paul Keres, come on. Paul Keres, he was an Estonian and Soviet chess master and chess writer. Okay, he died in Finland, Helsinki, Finland, when he was 59 years of age. He was a grandmaster. 1950 he got his title, and he was born 1916, so we're going right back a bit. So 1953, when this tournament was played, he would have been 1953 would have been 37 years old. There you go, the great Paul Keres. Okay, and I think I'll tell you about this one. Yeah, so this is the Paul Keres coin that I told you about. Yeah, Paul Keres is on the, whoop, there it is. It's on eBay. So if you want to get a lucky chess coin, you can get a Paul Keres chess coin on eBay. Yeah, I bought one for a friend of mine. That's the Paul Keres. You see, there he is playing chess. And that's real currency. And so there you go. As a reminder of his 100th birthday, Estonia's issued a special €2 coin for his 100th birthday, Paul Keres. There you go. It's a copper nickel messing coin. So so there you go. There's a coin for his 100th birthday. What a chess player, eh? Playing chess right up till he's 100 years of age. So that's Paul Keres. Right. So now we're going to get on to our next game. I was just introducing to you a few of the players. In our next game, Game 3, we're looking at Mark Taimanov versus Miguel Najdorf. And we're going to have a look at a King's Indian. So we've covered the Queen's Gambit, we've covered the Benko Gambit, and we've covered a few openings. But now we're going to cover the King's Indian. Okay, King's Indian opening. And we're going to choose, we're going to choose this wonderful game here between Taimanov and Miguel Najdorf. We all know Mark Taimanov, one of the strongest grandmasters, played the candidates, absolute champion, and Miguel Najdorf. Miguel Najdorf was also, don't forget, he was the blindfold world chess champion, right? He used to have the record for playing hundreds of blindfold games all at once, right? So D2 to D4. I don't know whether it was hundreds, but it was a lot of blindfold games. And knight in G8 to F6. I don't know how he could possibly remember all the positions, but he used to love to do it. C2, C4. The Russians, talking about psychology in chess, someone asked me there earlier about psychology in chess, and they said, can you talk about the psychology in chess? Well, the Russian psychiatrists actually thought that blindfold chess was not good for the brain, the way the brain worked. That's what I heard when I was younger, and I was listening to the exploits of Miguel Najdorf. MyChess.com username is The Magician, named after the great Miguel, right? Okay. Hello, chat. Is the Dutch defence good against the London system? The London systems, everyone wants to talk about the London system. On YouTube, there's a whole lot of videos on YouTube on how to smash the London. So I suggest you all go and look at those things, right? There's videos all over the place on YouTube on how to smash the London. So there you go. That's the answer to that question. And I think there's one video there put out by Eric Rosen. He shows how Hikaru Nakamura smashed the London and beat up a powerful player. I'm not interested in the good line right now, Ukraine Malchik. I'm actually we're in the process of reviewing the Zurich International Chess Tournament in 1953, right? And we're not playing through all the games. There's over 200 games in this book, but we're going to get into Taimanov and Najdorf. And we're going to start straight away. Knight G5 F6, C2, C4, G7, G6, Knight B1, C3, Bishop F8, G7, E2, E4. I'm just going through these quickly because these are standard sort of moves, D7, D6. Knight G1 to F3, just developing the knights on F3 and C3. Black castles, puts his king in safety. Bishop F1 to E2. And we all know the reasons behind this game is basically black wants to strike at the centre, right? Strike at the centre somehow. And white wants to continue to maintain space over the centre, right? So anyway, it's in this position. E5 is played in the spirit of the game. White castles. And knight b file to c6 is played. and d4, d5 is played, okay? Okay, so white's got space in the centre, with a little bit of control over pawns. And black's got black squares. He's got his pawn chain on black squares. White's got pawns on white squares. And often in these types of positions, if black wants to win or to play an active game, he has to play f5, right? So that's normally the move that black would be preparing for, right? And not long before this tournament, Taimanov employed this opening variation, knight c6, right, and d5, twice in the 20th USSR Championship. And in both cases, he scored with one and the same plan, a break pawn on the c file, right, followed by an outflanking turning manoeuvre around the entire grouping of black's pieces on the d file through to the g files. So there you go. So he was already played this position. So we're looking at Mark Taimanov as white and Miguel Najdorf as black. And in the Russian Championship, right, he'd already broke through on the queen side. Let's see what happens. Knight c6 to e7. Knight f3 to e1. Knight f6 to d7, bishop c1 to e3. Now you can see he wants to get a break over here, right? f7, f5. Remember I said that if you want to win, that's the sort of move that you have to play. And now white just quietly plays f3, okay? The pawn is pushed forwards, gaining space, and now the bishop goes to f2, okay? So he just returns the bishop to f2. And Bronstein speaks of Mark Taimanov's kingside defensive array appears most imposing. So what he's saying is white was very, very hard to crack white's position with the black pieces, right? It says the pawns on the light squares form a kind of toothed fortress wall. I like the way he says that. That's why I say he's an incredible writer, this David Bronstein. Incredible writer. He writes with colorization, you know, so that your brain is lit up when you read his words. Right? He says, with the dark square bishop covering the gaps between the teeth. So he calls it the teeth, like a wolf. He says covering the squares between the teeth of the position. Right? But he says if the position be examined without prejudgment, then it would be naive to speak of any sort of advantage to white. So there you go. So he says that position's got equal chances, really, in so many words. I won't read you the rest. I'll get back into the game. G6, G5. Knight to E1 to D3. Now knight to D7 to F6. Black's plan is to proceed with G4 or prepare it with H4 and then play G4 or something like that. Right? As another system black uses here, he plays rook F7 and bishop F8. Right? So his rook can move to G2. Right? So if you want to get your rook here to here, that's what you do. If you get your rook here, you can push the pawn with the rook behind it, can't you? So one of the plans is rook here, bishop here, and then rook here. So that rook's behind the G pawn, so you can push it with the rook behind it. Right? We'll see what he does. Knight E1 to D3. Knight D7 to F6, right? C4, C5. Straight away he attacks. Right? Knight E7 to G6. There we go. Rook on the 8 file to C1. He wants to break through down. He wants to tear into the position, right? Rook F8 to F7. He moves his rook up, right? Rook C1 to C2. White's building as well. Rook, bishop G7, F8. See what I told you? That's a standard plan. right, amongst the grandmasters. I know, I've been watching what they do. I have never played through this game before. C7, what? Oh, C5, D6. Oh, he takes a pawn off. And the pawn recaptures. Queen to D1 to D2 is played. So White's preparing to shift his pieces all over here and smash through the queenside. Now here it comes. Bang, he says, I can't wait any longer. Here I go. And now rook on the F file to C1. G4, G3, he says, bang, I'm coming in to get you. Oh boy. Who's playing the black pieces here? Miguel Najdorf. Miguel Najdorf, you're a genius. I love it. I love this man. Anyway, the pawn says, oh, you can't give me a pawn for nothing. I'll take it off. And he took it. And then the pawn takes back. And now he took it off. And now this knight comes here. That's the point of the move. That's the point of the move. Knight F6 to H5 to attack the bishop. And the bishop moves back here to protect the king. Right? Mindful, bishop F8 to G7. Now he switches. The bishop moves over here. He's changed his mind with the bishop. Knight C3 to B1. Look at this move. Knight to C3 to B1. And the bishop on C8 goes to D7. He says, I don't want you coming in here annoying me. Queen D5, D2 to E1. Look at this move. The manoeuvring is absolutely out of this world. These guys are unbelievable. Bishop E7 to G5. What? Oh no, sorry. I'm going to go back. That bishop here. He made bishop to E7. Right. Knight C3 to B1. Bishop C8 to D7. Queen D5 to E1. Right. Bishop E7 to G5. You can see how that's a better idea straight away. He's attacking the castle and he's controlling black squares with the use of these knights. And even the queen could come in and join in. Knight in the B file to D2. So he's moved his knight here. Now he goes over here and he says, right, do your best. And he says, right, I'm coming to get you. He gives him a big check. And he goes in the corner. And now queen to D8. He says, I'm going to throw my queen in too. Hey, I'll tell you what, doesn't it look dangerous now? Black's pieces march onto the battlefield like soldiers in column, one after the other. Here, Taimanov ought to have rid himself of the bishop at E3, even at the cost of the exchange, by playing knight takes C4. The knight to C4. So in other words, Bronstein's saying knight to C4, attack that bishop, get rid of it at all costs. That's how dangerous it is. Anyway, he didn't. He didn't listen because he wasn't telling him. Bishop E2 to F1. So he moved back here to protect his king. Rook on A8 to F8. He's doubling the crooks, right? Rook on C1 to D1. Oh, he's off the pin at last. B7 to B5. He says, you're not going to stop my bishop. I won't let you. A2, A4. He says, oh, please take my pawn. I want to stick my knight here and get rid of your bishop. A7 to A6. He says, oh, no, I'm not playing your game. I'm playing my game. He takes the pawn off and the pawn recaptures. Rook C2 to C7. He says, oh, I'll do anything to try to attack you, so I'll go down the back there. Rook on f7 to g7. He's piling up his rook and his queen on this pawn. Can you see combinations coming? Knight d2 to b3. He's going over there now. Knight on g6 to h4. He's getting closer. He's getting closer with the attack. This is scary, isn't it? Isn't this scary? Yobelizer, do you find this scary, my friend? Yeah, thank you, Yobelizer. You've got to go. He's got to go now, he says. Please try not to swear in the chat. I'll allow it this time. Okay, that's all right. But let's all be mindful that sometimes young women and young boys come in. I get a little fellow in there. I can't control the sort of people that come in here by way of age, because I don't know who's watching. But sometimes I get a little fellow there in here from India. He's a lovely little boy. He's only 10 years of age. So they don't want to listen to swearing and bad words. Okay, so this is our clean channel, right? It's a clean channel, right? And so we respect everybody here. We respect your right to express yourself. But don't forget, if you're a decent person, you've got to consider sometimes there might be kiddies in here, right? Okay, so where are we now? So rook c7 to c2. Oh, rook c7 to c2. Where was I? Rook on f7 to g7. Oh, that's right. Knight d2 to b3, did that. Oh, knight g6 to h4, great. Rook c7 to c2. You know what he's decided to do? He's decided to come back and defend. Bishop d7 to h3. Look at this. And what happens if you take the bishop? Oh, T-Market, I'll tell you what. If you're a subscriber to my channel, right, do you know that I've got a new emoticon? I thought I had one. I thought I had an angel there. Where's my angel? I thought I put an angel in there. Where's my angel? I can't see the angel. Anyway, I love you all. Grandmaster Teddy's watching. He's there. He's watching. Grandmaster Teddy's watching. He's watching everybody. Bishop D, he's a moderator, Grandmaster Teddy. Bishop d7 to h3. Now you can't take this bishop, right? If you take the bishop, you'll sacrifice his queen, just like they do on chess problems on chess.com. And now queen to e1 to e2. So he decides I'll play queen here to protect along here. I've got to protect that pawn. And now knight on the h4 file to g2. He takes the pawn anyway. He says, cop that, buddy. And the bishop takes on g2. And the bishop on the h3 takes g2. And the queen takes. Hold on. There's no more attack. Uh-oh. Queen attack, queen attack. White cannot save his queen, since if he retreats, black has a knight check at g3. So he can't save his queen, right? So because he can't save his queen, he gives it up. He plays queen takes rook check. The king takes back. Rook on the c2 to g2 check. But at this stage, it's lost, right? King g7 to h8, knight on d file to e1. It looks like he's going back to defend again. Knight h file to f4, and rook on g2 to g3, and bishop e3 to f2. There we go. And that looks like about the end of the section, doesn't it? Doesn't that look bad? g3 to g4. Oh, look, he saved it. And now the queen moves a little bit closer, and he's threatening. Bishop takes knight, and queen takes pawn check, right? Knight b file to d2. He holds on. And h7, h5. He says, where's your rook going, buddy? And here the game was adjourned, and white sealed the move. Rook g5. But without further play, after rook g8, right, and rook takes g8 and king takes g8, he's got no defence against checkmate. The checkmate being bishop takes knight and queen checks, and you can't stop it. There is no defence, right? Okay. So that's why he resigned. And that, my friends and fellow chess players, is how Mark Taimanov how Miguel Najdorf, with the black pieces, played the King's Indian and defeated Mark Taimanov, the great Mark Taimanov. I've got another game for you now. Gee, I'm going well here, aren't I? I've been going for an hour. This one here is Smyslov Keres. It's from round 7. It's game 63 of over 200 games in this wonderful book. Right, this is the wonderful book available on Amazon. Right, the 1953 Zurich International Chess Tournament. It's about $27, postage free to all over the world. Got 200 games in it with analysis, wonderful writing and preface to the book, stories from the great David Bronstein. Took him 10 years to write this book. Apparently, to put it all together, 10 years of his life. So this is a fantastic chess book and one for anyone's library if they want to have that sort of thing. I'm getting no money from promoting this book. I don't get anything at all. Nothing. Zip, nothing, right? I'm just doing it because I love chess. Right? Okay, so we're going to get back here. Go to puzzle battle. Then we'll go to analysis. We get back to the analysis. And we're playing Smyslov Keres. I don't know whether I'm going to last. I've got to play Smyslov Keres, and then I've got to go to round 15, play Kotov versus Szabo. There's one game here that you're going to absolutely love the finish of the game, right? Anyway, this game, well, all the games are wonderful games. But this is Smyslov versus the great Paul Keres. Have I done Keres twice? Yeah, I've done Keres twice. You know what? If you're going to buy this book, I don't know whether I should show you this game. You know what? I'm going to miss this game because I don't want to cover Keres twice. Tomorrow night, I'm going to do part 2 of this tournament. I'm going to have a look at some of the other games. So I might pass over the Smyslov Keres round 7. Just go to Kotov Szabo in round 15. All right, so this is Kotov and Szabo. Now, when we're talking chess players, who was Kotov? Who was Szabo? Right, well, here we go. I just type in Szabo chess, and we're talking about Lazlo Szabo. Takes you to Wikipedia. You want to find out about any of the old great masters and you don't know who they are, you might be a young person and not have the knowledge of players of the past or an extensive knowledge of that. So, but Lazlo Szabo was a Hungarian, right? He was a Hungarian. There's his photograph there. I'll make sure you can see it. Yep, you can. That's in Wikipedia, just general information. So it's Szabo Lazlo, or Lazlo Szabo. He's born in 1917. He's a Hungarian chess player. It reminds me of that great Hungarian did a special, a YouTube special on him. Hey, T-Market, thank you for gifting the subs in the channel, my friend, T-Market. T-Market's gifted subs to TFS T0832 and to Black Bull Yami, Dr.